Again, wood finishers. Okay, so we talked about clear finishing here for clear finishing for pore fillers, but now we're looking at a piece of mahogany here, and this is historically the most appropriate to now start finishing with a slightly different approach, and we're no longer using clear pore finishers or pore fillers, pardon me, but we're going to start to add some color to make this this grain and the color really pop, really stand out. So there's a couple ways we can do it. We could try to match a color to the mahogany, and that will give it a little bit less depth in a lot of ways. The clear will reflect light a little bit deeper. If we fill this in with a color that's similar to the rest of this, it gets a little bit muddy. So historically what's being done is that a darker filler has been put into mahogany, and then once it's flattened after it's dried, you'll really start to see that darker tone coming through, and it just kind of works. It's just really fantastic way of adding richness and depth to your wood. So that's what we're going to do now. So what I'm going to do here is use this Balin's product, and I could add dye to any of these to clear, but this one seems to already have some colorant in it, and so we're going to start to work with that. What I need, I need a bottle to have samples in, and I will probably make this one a brown. Can I do brown? Nope. How about an amber? I'll do amber. Yes, I'll do an amber. Okay, so starting with the raw material here, get this into where I want to do some samples and some tests. If it's not messy, you're not doing it right. And I would always recommend transferring this on top of your board you want to finish. Don't do that. All right. So I've got enough in there to work with, and that'll at least give me a good sense of this, which is going to be a sample of what my material is going to be doing. If this is for a larger piece, I would be insane if I just jumped right into, without doing a test board or a sample board, to just hit right on this thing. So the mixing of this, I have trans tint here. You can use dry dyes if they're water-based, but these liquid ones are totally appropriate to be mixed with. My aim is not so good. Totally appropriate for mixing with alcohol or water-based finishes. And so you can start to see I'm starting to change the color on this a bit, which is what I wanted. Alright, so this amber is awfully light. I'm not sure what this is going to do for me as far as the mahogany goes, but we can definitely try it. I'll go a little bit darker. So this time, oh, that's why I missed. The nozzle here is broken off, so I can't take full blame for missing the target. This is probably the last thing I'm going to do with this. I'm going to make it count. So you're going to find that with these dyes that there is kind of a limit or a saturation point of how dark this color will actually translate to. And so if you've done as much as you can with one dye color, then you might have to jump up to going with a darker color and kind of mixing those. And it's always easier to start with a lighter color and making it darker. If you start too dark and want to lighten that color, it's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of material to do so. So, yeah, let's see what this looks like. I'm not sure if I'm going to love this, but let's try it. All right. So, leaving that in there. So I haven't prepped this face, but you'll see that I started with a different concoction of a blue dye that was mixed with the same pore filler, and that's what you see over here. So now what I want to do, and this is being dried, I put this on right before I started recording, and it really doesn't take much time for this stuff to set up, to cure. So now I want to put my barrier there, and I'll start applying this to the other side, which is going to be foreground, no longer background. That's unfortunate. All right, so how do we put this stuff on? There's nothing right or wrong about this. I just need to distribute this onto the board. And I'm going to go pretty generous with this. Once I've got that, then the spreader will really start doing the heavy lifting of getting this into areas that I want and need it to get into. Same rules apply as the first video. If I wanted to pack this in through the pores using burlap material, I sure can. But I found that this spreader really does most, if not a better job of what that burlap would ideally do. Alright, so let me do this. Alright, so you can see I have a really thick layer here right in the center. Hopefully that's coming through. None of that's going to do me any good. That's just more work for me to sand or thin or clear out before I put on my top coat. So to leave this on would be a mistake. So what I want to do before it starts hardening is scrape this stuff off. I've got a pretty even coat everywhere, which is what I want. So now the rest of this mix, let's say I'm happy with it, this color, it's going to go right back into the bottle, and that will hopefully enable me to remember to use that next time if it works. All right, so appropriate solvents now. Water-based stuff, I'm just using water. Tap water is totally fine here. Purists would probably tell you distilled water is a better option. And then the other thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to start to work this around. And in essence, I'm just kind of thinning this filler out a bit, getting it everywhere that it needs to be. Did the same thing for the blue as well. And all of this, again, to be incredibly repetitive, is just to try to save me a step after this stuff dries and doing the sanding that I'll need to do to apply my top coat. Okay. So you'll notice one more time I'm going across the grain, not with the grain. And that feels like it's pretty consistent. All right, cool. So once these things dry, going back to sanding, I'll probably do 180 and then 220, and then that's it. If I'm sanding more aggressively than that, my fear is that I'm going to be pulling off more depth into this board than I really want, and so whatever pore filling I've done is going to go away. Question about how many coats of pore filling is always a good one. There's a lot of factors into this. Not so much with how heavy I apply it, because the pores will only accept so much. But this last step about using this solvent and this abrasion here, just to kind of work it through, I don't want to pull any more of that out than possible. So I want to be kind of quick about how I'm doing that. So hopefully that was successful. I won't know until this dries, I sand it and put on a top coat and really see what I did. And it's an experiment. This should be fun. It'd be interesting to see what this amber color looks like. The blue, I think, is going to be the bigger mystery, and playing with a little bit of color theory with the blue and then this brownish red tone of the mahogany. The amber will probably blend a little bit more succinctly. I think a safer option is to go much darker in these areas. So to do a brown or even sneaking up on a black color is doable. But let's say you want to go the other direction. If you have something that's truly clear, not this neutral, you can add dye to this, and white dye, and I could put this thing in here and you'd have this really beautiful effect regardless of the wood color. And it's a fun thing to explore and experiment with. I would encourage everybody to at least do this once to know what it's all about, and hopefully good things will come. All right, enjoy the process. See you in the next video.